5 years later, Taewoo stood on the observation deck of the exploration ship New Horizon, watching 3 young Veltari wolves play in the ship's recreation area. Tyvin, Nursel, and Hanara had grown into magnificent creatures, each now the size of a small shuttle like their mother, but with personalities that reflected both their Veltari heritage and their unique upbringing among humans. Uncle Taewoo, Tyvin called, using the human word he had learned for the man who had helped bring him into the world. His crystalline fur shimmered blue with excitement as he bounded over. "Look what we found." The young wolf carefully placed a strange crystal formation at Taewoo's feet. It was unlike anything in the ship's geological database, with internal structures that seemed to pulse with their own light. "Very interesting," Taewoo said, kneeling down to examine the crystal more closely. "Where did you find this?" "On the moon we just surveyed," Hanara replied, joining her brother. Her fur was now a deep gold color, inherited from her mother's emotional spectrum. "There are thousands of them in the underground caves." "Millions," Nursel added, approaching more quietly than her siblings. She had always been the thoughtful one, with silver fur that reminded everyone of Sylvan. "The whole moon is full of—" Taewoo smiled as he studied the crystal. The 3 cubs had become invaluable members of the exploration team. Their enhanced senses could detect things that human instruments missed, and their natural intelligence had only grown with education and exposure to multiple species. "We should show this to the geology team," he said. "This could be important." "Already did," Tyvin replied proudly. "Dr. Martinez says it might be a new form of energy storage. The preliminary tests are very promising." As the cubs ran off to continue their games, Taewoo reflected on how much had changed since that day in Cargo Bay 12. The discovery of living Veltari wolves had revolutionized galactic politics and science. What had started as a crisis had become the foundation for a new era of interspecies cooperation. The first change had come quickly. Within weeks of the cubs' birth, representatives from the Veltari homeworld had arrived at the station. Had been amazed to learn that their ancient legends were real, that the great wolves of their mythology still existed somewhere in the galaxy, but the real surprise had come when Sylvan finally felt safe enough to tell her full story. She wasn't just any Veltari wolf. She was a guardian, one of the last of her kind, tasked with protecting ancient knowledge and wisdom. Her species hadn't gone extinct, they had gone into hiding, waiting for the galaxy to become wise enough to accept them. The birth of her cubs on a multi-species station, with help from humans, had been a sign that the time of hiding was over. "Taewoo," a familiar voice called from behind him. He turned to see Sylvan approaching, her massive form moving with the grace that only came with complete comfort in her fur was a peaceful blue-green, the color she showed when she was content and happy. "Hello, Sylvan Aramoth," he said, using her full name as he always did. Over the years, their communication had improved dramatically. The translation devices were better now, and both species had learned to understand each other's languages more naturally. "The cubs found something interesting," she said, settling down beside him. "They are excited about the crystal formations. They're growing up to be excellent explorers," Taewoo replied. "You should be proud. But I am most proud that they grow up without fear, without hiding." Sylvan had become the first Veltari ambassador to the galactic community. Her wisdom and patient nature had helped overcome centuries of fear and misunderstanding. Other Veltari had slowly emerged from hiding, sharing their knowledge of ancient technologies and forgotten sciences. The benefits to galactic civilization had been enormous. Veltari understanding of crystal technology had revolutionized energy storage and faster-than-light communication. Their knowledge of biology had led to medical breakthroughs that helped dozens of species. Most importantly, their philosophy of cooperation and mutual protection had begun to influence how different species worked together. "Any word from the homeworld?" Taewoo asked. "Good news," Sylvan replied, her fur shifting to bright gold with pleasure. "The council has approved the expansion of the exchange program. 20 more families will be sending their cubs to live and learn, among other species." The exchange program had been Sylvan's idea. Young Veltari would spend part of their education living with other species, learning their languages and cultures. In return, young beings from other species could visit Veltari worlds to learn their ancient wisdom. Tyvin, Nursel, and Anara had been the first exchange students, and their success had proven the value of the program. They were fully comfortable with humans, but they also maintained their Veltari identity and values. "Speaking of the exchange program," Taewoo said, "I got a message from Nari yesterday. She's finally finished her medical residency on the Veltari homeworld. Dr. Nari has learned much," Sylvan said approvingly. "She will be a great healer, combining human and Veltari medical knowledge." Nari had been one of the first humans to join the exchange program, spending 3 years learning Veltari healing techniques. Hannah had followed her, studying leadership and conflict resolution methods. Even Bong Su had eventually joined a cultural exchange, learning Veltari security practices that emphasized protection rather than aggression. "The galaxy is changing," Taewoo said, watching the cubs play with other young beings from the exploration team. There were human children, young Condorians, baby arachnids, and others, all playing together, without fear or prejudice. Yes, Sylvan agreed. It is becoming what it should have been long ago. A place where different kinds of life can work together. As they talked, Professor Shin approached them. The old linguist was now in his 80s, but he remained active as the head of the new Interspecies Communication Institute. Sylvan Taewoo, he said with a smile, I have news from the Institute. We've just established successful communication with the crystalline beings of Rigel 7. They're interested in joining the galactic community. Another species emerging from isolation, Sylvan observed. The pattern continues. It was true. Since the Veltari had revealed themselves, dozens of other species had come forward. Many had been hiding, like the Veltari, waiting for the galaxy to become a safer place. Others had simply been too afraid to make contact. The success of the Veltari integration had given them hope. What did we learn about them? Taewoo asked. They're silicon-based, highly intelligent, and they've been watching us for centuries. They say they decided to make contact because they observed how we treated the They want to see if the same cooperation is possible with their species. Taewoo felt the familiar excitement that came with each new first contact. Each species brought new knowledge, new perspectives, new ways of solving old problems. I'd like to be part of the contact team, he said. I thought you might, Professor Shin replied with a knowing smile. You've become our best first contact specialist. As the old professor walked away, Sylvan made a sound that Taewoo had learned to recognize as laughter. What's funny? He asked. You little human. 5 years ago, you were afraid to approach one pregnant wolf. Now you want to talk to crystal beings you've never met. I had a good teacher, Taewoo replied. You taught me that understanding is always better than fear. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the next generation play and learn together. The cubs had gathered the crystal formation they'd found and were showing it to their friends, explaining its properties with the patient teaching style they'd learned from both human and Veltari mentors. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come to our station that day, Taewoo said. Nothing good, Sylvan replied. My cubs would have been born in hiding, in fear. They would have grown up believing that other species were enemies to be avoided. And we would have missed the chance to learn from your people. Yes, but you did not turn away when I needed help. You chose understanding over fear. That choice changed everything. As if sensing their conversation, Tyvan looked up from his group of friends and called out, Uncle Taewoo, will you tell us the story again? Which story? Taewoo called back, though he already knew the answer. The story of how you and Mother met, how you learned to talk to each other. It was their favorite story, one they never tired of hearing. Taewoo looked at Sylvan, who made the sound that meant yes please. All right, he said, standing up. Gather around, everyone. As children from a dozen different species settled in a circle around him, Taewoo began the story that had become legend throughout the galaxy. Story of how a frightened human knelt before a dangerous alien predator and spoke her name. The story of how understanding triumphed over fear, and how one act of courage opened the door to a new era of galactic cooperation. It was a story worth telling, because it reminded everyone that the greatest discoveries came not from conquering the unknown, but from having the courage to reach out and try to understand it. And in the years to come, as the galaxy continued to grow and change, that story would inspire countless others to choose understanding over fear, cooperation over conflict, and hope over despair. Dr. Jiwon Kim stared at the readings on her scanner screen. The green dots that showed life signs were fading fast. Something was dying out there in the wasteland, and the biological signatures looked familiar. She stood in the research station's main lab, surrounded by the quiet hum of machines. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the red glow of dawn breaking over the horizon. Most of the other researchers were still sleeping, but Jiwon had been working through the night again. Her colleagues often joked that she never rested. They said she cared more about alien biology than her own health. Maybe they were right, but Jiwon had good reasons for her dedication. The scanner beeped softly. The life signs were getting weaker. Whatever was out there would not last much longer. Guan moved closer to the screen and adjusted the settings. The readings became clearer. Her heart began to beat faster as she recognized the patterns. These were not human life signs. They were Karathi. More than that, the readings showed something unusual. The biological markers indicated a pregnancy, a difficult one, the kind that usually ended badly without medical help. G1 had studied Karathi biology for 5 years. She knew more about their species than any other human on Vega Prime. The research fascinated her, but it was more than just scientific curiosity. She had learned to respect the Karathi people, their culture, their way of life. She also knew their laws. Pregnant Karathi females were never left alone in the wilderness. Their packs protected them with fierce devotion. For one to be out there, dying meant something terrible had happened. Jiwon pulled up the detailed scans. The readings showed 2 smaller life forms inside the larger one. Twins, both were in distress. Without help, all 3 would be dead before the day ended. She looked around the empty lab. The other researchers would not wait for hours. By then, it would be too late. If she was going to act, she had to do it now. Ji-won knew the risks. Approaching a Karathi in the wild was dangerous. They were natural predators, stronger and faster than humans. A pregnant female protecting her unborn young would be even more aggressive, but she also knew she could not just stand by and watch them die. Ji-won gathered her medical supplies quickly. Portable scanner, emergency surgical kit, pain medication. That worked on Karathi physiology. Nutrient supplements, a small oxygen generator in case breathing became difficult. She loaded everything into a hover sled designed for rough terrain. The machine would carry her across the wasteland faster than walking, but it was still a long journey to reach the life signs. Before leaving, Ji-won checked her translation device. The machine could handle basic Karathi language, but her own knowledge went deeper. She had spent countless hours learning their words, their grammar, their cultural meanings. Language was the key to understanding any species. The hover sled carried her out into the morning light. The wasteland stretched ahead, empty and harsh. Red rocks jutted up from the cracked ground like broken teeth. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived here by choice. As she traveled, Ji-won thought about the Karathi she had met over the years. Most contacts were formal. Scientific exchanges, diplomatic meetings, but there had been exceptions. She remembered treating injured Karathi who came to the human medical center. Their own healers were skilled, but sometimes human technology could help where traditional methods failed. Ji-won had always been gentle. With these patients, she learned that Karathi responded well to calm voices and slow movements. There had been one patient who stayed in her memory, an elderly female named Enna who had been hurt in a mining accident. Radiation poisoning. Very serious. The human doctors had done everything they could, but the damage was too severe. Enna had died peacefully, but her final days had been difficult. The fever made her delirious. She spoke constantly about someone called Dane, a daughter Ji-won had realized, a child lost long ago. In her dying moments, Enna had gripped Ji-won's hand with surprising strength. Her golden eyes had burned with desperate need. Find her, Enna had whispered in broken human language. Tell her, I remember. Tell her the name I gave her when the eclipse came. Dane, my little Dane. Ji-won had promised, even though she knew it was probably impossible. How could she find one Karathi among thousands? But the dying mother's words had touched her heart. She had written down everything Enna said about her lost daughter. The markings on her fur, the scar on her muzzle, the silver streak along her left ear. The hover sled slowed as it reached rougher ground. Ji-won checked the scanner again. The life signs were very close now. Just over the next ridge, she left the sled and climbed the rocky slope on foot. Her medical bag felt heavy on her shoulder. The morning sun was getting hotter, and sweat began to form on her forehead. At the top of the ridge, Ji-won stopped. Below her, next to a large boulder, lay a Karathi female. Even from a distance, Ji-won could see she was in bad shape. Her silver fur was dirty and matted. Her breathing looked labored. The female was alone. No pack members in sight. No protective circle of guards. Just one dying mother and her unborn cubs. Ji-won started down the slope carefully. She moved slowly, making noise so the Karathi would know she was coming. Sudden movements might trigger an attack response. The female heard her approach and lifted her head. Golden eyes locked onto Ji-won's face. A low growl rumbled in the Karathi's throat. Her lips pulled back to show sharp teeth. Ji-won stopped walking. She raised her hands to show she carried no weapons. In slow, careful Karathi words, she spoke. I am a healer. I want to help. The growling continued. The female tried to stand, but her legs shook with weakness. She collapsed back against the boulder, breathing hard. Ji-won took another step forward. The medical scanner in her bag was picking up more detailed readings now. The pregnancy was complicated. Hybrid complications, the kind that usually killed both mother and offspring. Understanding hit Ji-won like a physical blow. This was why the female was alone, why her pack had abandoned her. She carried mixed blood cubs, human and Karathi combined. That the knowledge changed everything. This was not just a medical emergency. It was a tragedy born from the same kind of love that had once brought two species together in secret. Ji-won looked at the dying female more carefully. Silver fur, a scar across the muzzle. And there, along the left ear, a distinctive silver streak. Her heart began to race. Could it be possible? She took another step closer. The female bared her teeth again, but the growl was weaker now. Exhaustion was winning over aggression. Ji-won made a decision that would change both their lives. She spoke one word in the old Karathi language, a name that should have been forgotten. Dane. The effect was immediate. The female's eyes went wide with shock. Her growling stopped completely. She stared at Ji-won as if seeing a ghost. How? She whispered in broken human words. How do you know that name? Ji-won felt tears forming in her eyes. After 3 years of carrying Enna's final message, she had found the daughter who was thought lost forever. Your mother told me, Ji-won said softly. She wanted you to know that you were loved. Nara's world stopped moving. The pain in her body faded. The heat of the wasteland disappeared. Only one thing mattered now. This human stranger had spoken her true name. The name her mother had whispered when she was born. Imposible. Nara breathed. Her voice was barely a whisper. No one knows that name. No one living. Jiwon knelt slowly beside the dying Karathi. She kept her movements gentle and calm. The medical bag slipped from her shoulder to the ground. Right now, healing the body was less important than healing the spirit. Your mother's name was Ina, Jiwon said softly. She died 3 years ago in our medical center. Radiation poisoning from the mining accident at Sector 7. Nara's golden eyes filled with tears. She had not known. Her mother had left the pack years before to work in the dangerous mines. They had not spoken since the old traditions demanded that Karathi, who chose to work with humans, be cut off from pack life. She talked about you in her final days, Jiwon continued. She was delirious with fever, but she kept saying your name. Not the name the pack gave you when you became adult. The name she gave you at birth. Dane, Nara whispered. It means little star in the old language. Jiwon nodded. She said you were born during the eclipse. When the 2 moons covered the sun, she said it was a sign that you would bridge 2 worlds. The tears came freely now. Nara had spent her whole life believing her mother had abandoned her, that she had chosen the human world over her own daughter. But the truth was different. Ina had carried her love in silence, even to her death. Jiwon reached into her medical bag and pulled out a small recording device. She left a message for you. I have kept it safe for 3 years, hoping someday I would find you. With shaking hands, Nara took the device. Jiwon showed her how to activate it. Her mother's voice filled the air between them, weak but clear. My little star, Ina's voice said in the Karathi language. If you hear this, then the healer woman has kept her promise. I am sorry I could not be there to see you grow. I am sorry the pack made me choose between you and survival. Nara pressed the device closer to her ear. 3 years of anger and hurt began to dissolve as she heard her mother's love in every word. I worked in the mines to send money back to the pack. For your education, for your future. But I could never tell you. The elders forbade contact. They said I was dead to the pack, dead to you. Jiwon watched as Nara listened to her mother's final words. The human woman remembered that night clearly. Ina had been fading fast, but she had found strength to record the message. She had made Jiwon promise to find her daughter somehow. I know you will face hard choices in your life. Ina's voice continued. The old ways are strong, but they are not always right. Love is stronger than law, hope is stronger than fear. Remember that when the time comes, the recording ended. Nara held the device against her heart and wept. All these years, she had carried the pain of believing herself unloved. Now she knew the truth. Her mother had loved her enough to work in the deadly mines, had loved her enough to entrust her memory to a stranger. How did you find me? Nara asked when she could speak again. Jiwon explained about the life sign scanners, about the dangerous readings that showed a pregnancy in distress, about the decision to come out into the wasteland alone to help. I studied your people, Jiwon said, your biology, your culture. I have learned to respect the Karathi way of life, but I also know that sometimes the old laws cause unnecessary suffering. Nara looked at this human woman who had risked her life to help a stranger, who had carried a dying mother's love for 3 years without knowing if she would ever be able to deliver it. You are the memory keeper, Nara said in wonder, the one who holds what others forget. Jiwon had never thought of herself that way, but the words felt right. In her research, she had collected many stories, many memories. The Karathi had a rich culture full of wisdom and beauty, but they also had painful rules that separated families and broke hearts. Your mother described you perfectly, Jiwon said. The silver streak on your left ear, the scar on your muzzle from a hunting accident when you were young, the way you carry yourself with quiet dignity. Nara touched her ear self-consciously. She remembered such small things. Mothers always remember, Jiwon said, every detail, every moment. Love makes perfect memory. A sharp pain cut through Nara's body. The cubs were moving again, restless and distressed. The emotional reunion had given her strength, but her body was still failing. Time was running out. Jiwon saw the change immediately. Her medical training took over. She activated her scanner and began taking readings. The results were worse than she had feared. The pregnancy is killing you, Jiwon said bluntly. The cubs are half human. Your body is rejecting them as foreign. Without surgery, you will all die within hours. Nara nodded slowly. She had suspected as much. The pain had been growing worse each day. Her strength was almost gone. The pack laws say such cubs are abominations. Nara said quietly, maybe they are right. Maybe I should not have loved outside my species. Jiwon's eyes flashed with anger. Your mother was right. Love is stronger than law. These cubs are not abominations. They are the future, the bridge between 2 worlds. She began unpacking her medical equipment. I have studied hybrid biology in secret. I know it is possible for the species to mix successfully, but it requires careful intervention. Nara watched as Jiwon prepared surgical tools. You would risk everything to save us. Why? Jiwon paused. In her work, the question deserved an honest answer. Because I made a promise to your mother. Because I believe in the power of love to create new possibilities. And because I have seen too much hatred between our species. It is time for something better. She knelt beside Nara with the scanner. The surgery will be dangerous. I have only done it in computer simulations. There's a good chance we will all die trying. Nara felt the cubs stirring inside her. Two small lives that had never asked to be born into a world that rejected them. They deserved a chance to live. To grow, to prove that love could conquer fear. My mother said I was born to bridge two worlds. Nara said, maybe this is how Jiwon nodded. Then we do this together. Human and Karathi. The memory keeper and the bridge builder. As she prepared for the most important surgery of her life, Jiwon thought about Ina's final words. The elderly Karathi had believed her daughter would face hard choices. She had been right, but Ina had also believed that love was stronger than law, that hope was stronger than fear. Now it was time to put that faith to the test. The red sun climbed higher in the alien sky. In the wasteland where nothing was supposed to live, two mothers from different worlds prepared to fight for the future. The surgery began as the sun reached its peak in the alien sky. Jiwon worked with steady hands while Nara drifted in and out of consciousness. The medical equipment hummed softly in the wasteland silence. Jiwon had never performed surgery under such conditions. The portable operating table was basic. The sterilization field barely covered the work area. Every few minutes, wind would blow dust across her instruments. But she pushed forward with determination. The scanner showed her what she was fighting against. Hybrid cubs were causing Nara's immune system to attack her own body. The pregnancy hormones were all wrong. Blood pressure was dangerous. Internal bleeding had started. Stay with me, Nara, Gigwon whispered as she worked. Your mother believed you were meant for great things. Don't prove her wrong now. Nara's eyes fluttered open. Tell me about her final days. Gigwon continued the delicate surgery while she spoke. Talking would help keep Nara conscious. It would also help Jiwon stay calm under pressure. She was proud, Jiwon said. Even dying, she held her head high. The other patients respected her. She never complained about the pain. The surgical laser cut carefully through damaged tissue. Jiwon had to repair the internal bleeding before she could address the immune system problems. She talked about teaching you to hunt. Jiwon continued. How you were the fastest runner in your age group. How you could track a snow rabbit across frozen ground. Nara managed a weak smile. I had forgotten she knew about the hunting lessons. I thought she only cared about her work. She cared about everything you did. Jiwon said. She just could not show it. The pack rules were too strict. The bleeding was under control. Now, Guan began the most dangerous part of the surgery. She had to inject Nara with human immunity. Suppressors, the drugs would stop her body from attacking the cubs. But they would also leave her vulnerable to infection. The cubs are moving, Nara said suddenly. I can feel them. Jiwon checked the scanner. Both small heartbeats were getting stronger. The surgery was working, but Nara's own vital signs were dropping. You are giving them your strength, Quan explained. Your body is trying to save them, even as it fails. She worked faster now. The immunity drugs were taking effect, but Nara needed immediate support. Jiwon connected an IV line and began pumping nutrients and blood expanders into her patient. Will they be normal? Nara asked. The cubs, will they be able to live in either world? Guan paused in her work. It was a question she had studied for years but never answered definitively. Hybrid offspring were possible, but their futures were uncertain. They will be something new, she said honestly. Not fully Karathi, not fully human, but that might be exactly what both our species need. Hours passed. The surgery continued. Jiwon repaired damaged organs and adjusted hormone levels. She had brought experimental treatments that existed only in her private research, drugs that no human had ever tested on a Karathi before. As the afternoon sun began to sink toward the horizon, the vital signs stabilized. Both cubs showed strong heartbeats. Nara's bleeding had stopped. Her breathing was steady. I think we did it, Jiwon said quietly. She was exhausted, but hope filled her voice. Nara's eyes opened wider than they had in hours. They are safe. For now, Jiwon said, but the real test comes when they are born, and when your pack learns what we have done. As if summoned by her words, a howl echoed across the wasteland. Then another, and another. A pack call that meant danger was coming. Nara's body went rigid with fear. They have found us. Jiwon looked toward the sound. Dust clouds on the horizon showed movement. A hunting party was approaching fast. Can you move? Jiwon asked urgently. Nara tried to sit up, but the surgery had left her weak. Not far, not fast. The howls were getting closer. Jiwon could count at least 6 different voices. A full hunting pack with orders to find the exile and finish what the wasteland had started. They will kill us all, Nara said. The cubs. You, me, the law demands it. Jiwon looked at her equipment. Most of it was too heavy to move quickly. but she grabbed the portable scanner and her emergency medical kit. If they were going to run, they would need to travel light. Your mother faced death with courage, Ji-won said. She told me that love was stronger than law. Let's prove her right. She helped Nara to her feet. The Karathi female was unsteady, but she could walk short distances. The surgery had given her strength she did not have before. There is a cave system near here, Nara said. Old mining tunnels from when the humans first came to this world. We might be able to hide there. They moved slowly across the rocky ground. Ji-won supported Nara when her legs shook. Every few minutes they stopped to rest and check the scanner. The cubs were still stable, but any stress could change that quickly. The howls were much closer now. Ji-won could see individual figures running across the wasteland. Golden fur gleaming in the sunlight, weapons raised high. There, Nara pointed to a dark opening in the cliff face. The old mine entrance. They reached the cave just as the hunting party crested the ridge behind them. Ji-won helped Nara into the darkness while sounds of pursuit echoed off the rocks. Inside the mine, ancient human machinery sat silent and rusted. This place had been abandoned for decades, but the tunnels went deep into the mountain. They could hide here, at least for a while. They will follow our scent, Nara said. Karathi can track anything. Ji-won activated her scanner. The device could detect life signs, but it could also create false readings. She began setting up decoy signals that would confuse the hunters. Let them come, she said grimly. Your mother trusted me with her most precious memory. I won't let her down now. Outside, the hunting party reached the cave entrance. Voices called out in the Karathi language. Commands to surrender. Threats of what would happen to those who helped the exile. But inside the mine, two mothers from different worlds prepared to defend the future they had fought so hard to create. The cubs stirred restlessly in Nara's womb, as if sensing the danger. The bond between human and Karathi had been forged in surgery and sealed with trust. Now it would be tested by fire. The mining tunnel was cold and dark. Water dripped from the ceiling onto rusted machinery that had not worked for 20 years. Ji-won helped Nara find a place to rest against an old support beam, while voices echoed from the cave entrance. Come out, exile, a deep voice called in the Karathi language. Face judgment with honor. Nara recognized the voice immediately. Goran, her former mate, had come to finish what the pack had started. The pain in her heart was sharper than any physical wound. He leads them, she whispered to Ji-won. The father of my cubs comes to destroy them. Ji-won checked her scanner. The hunting party had spread out around the cave entrance. They were not rushing in. That meant they planned to wait until hunger and thirst forced their prey to surrender. How long can we stay hidden? Ji-won asked. Nara touched her swollen belly. Not long. The cubs will come soon. I can feel them preparing. The contractions had started during the surgery but stopped when Ji-won stabilized her condition. Now they were beginning again. Stronger, more regular. Birth was only hours away. Ji-won activated her medical equipment. The portable scanner showed 2 healthy heartbeats. The cubs had survived everything so far. Surgery, pursuit, the stress of hiding in a cold cave. They were fighters, just like their mother. We need to find another way out, Ji-won said. These mining tunnels must connect to something. She explored deeper into the mountain while Nara rested. The human mining equipment was primitive by current standards, but it had carved extensive passages through the rock. Some tunnels were blocked by caverns, others disappeared into flooded chambers. But one passage showed signs of air movement, fresh air that came from somewhere else. Ji-won followed the tunnel for several hundred meters. It curved upward through the mountain and emerged onto a ledge high above the wasteland. The opening was hidden behind fallen rocks. Perfect concealment. She hurried back to find Nara in the grip of strong contractions. The cubs were coming, whether they were ready or not. I found another exit, Ji-won said. But you cannot move far in this condition. Then we make our stand here, Nara said through gritted teeth, in the deep dark where my cubs will be born. Ji-won began setting up her medical equipment. She had supplies for emergency delivery, but the conditions were far from ideal. No sterile environment, no backup power, no other doctors to help if something went wrong. Outside, the hunting party was growing impatient. More voices had joined the first group. Torches appeared at the cave entrance as they prepared to search the tunnels. They are coming in, Ji-won said. Nara nodded grimly. Then my cubs will be born as their ancestors were, in darkness, in danger, fighting for the right to exist. The first cub arrived as torchlight flickered in the distance, a tiny form covered in silver fur, with unmistakably human features. The eyes that opened were golden like a Karathi, but the shape of the face was different. Ji-won cleaned the newborn while Nara prepared for the second birth. The little one made soft sounds that were part Karathi growl and part human cry, a voice that belonged to both worlds and neither. She is beautiful, Ji-won whispered. The second cub came minutes later, larger than his sister, but just as perfectly formed. His fur was darker, more like his father's, but his hands had human thumbs that would let him use tools both species had. Created. G1 wrapped both cubs in warming blankets and placed them against Nara's chest. The new mother's eyes filled with tears of joy and exhaustion. They are alive, Nara breathed. After everything, they are alive. The torchlight was much closer now. Voices called out in the Karathi language as the hunting party searched tunnel by tunnel. We cannot run with newborns, Juan said. We have to face them. I know. Nara struggled to sit up straighter, but first, these cubs need names. If we die today, they should die knowing who they are. She looked at her daughter, the silver-furred female who had been born first. Ina, for the grandmother who loved from a distance, the name felt right. Jiwan smiled through her fears. The chain of memory would continue through this new generation. And the male, Nara, continued, looking at her son, Jinwoo, a human name, for the human woman who saved us all. Jiwan felt her heart swell. To have a cub named in her honor was a gift beyond measure. Footsteps echoed closer. The hunting party had found their tunnel. In minutes, they would be discovered. Whatever happens, Nara said, promise me you will tell them the truth. Tell them their mother loved them enough to die for them. You are not going to die, Jiwan said firmly. These cubs need their mother. I need my friend. She checked her remaining supplies. One emergency beacon that would call for human rescue. A few medical tools that could serve as weapons. Not much against a full hunting party, but sometimes courage mattered. More than equipment, the first hunter appeared around a bend in the tunnel. Golden eyes reflected the torchlight as they found their quarry. More figures emerged behind him. Goran stepped into the light, and Nara gasped. Her former mate looked older, tired. His golden fur was streaked with gray. She did not remember. So, he said quietly, the exile lives, and she has delivered her abominations into the world. They are your cubs too, Nara said. Her voice was weak but steady. Your blood flows in their veins. Goran's eyes moved to the tiny forms pressed against their mother's chest. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Pain, longing, love that he had tried to bury but could not kill. The law is clear, he said finally. Mixed blood cannot be allowed to spread. Jiwan stood up slowly. She positioned herself between the hunting party and the new family. The law is wrong, she said in careful Karathi words. These cubs are not abominations. They are hope. One of the other hunters snarled and raised his weapon. But Goran held up a hand to stop him. You are the human healer, he said to Jiwan, the one who learns our ways. I am the memory keeper, Jiwan replied, the one who remembers what others choose to forget. She activated her emergency beacon. Somewhere in the human settlement, rescue teams would receive the signal, but they were too far away to arrive in time. The confrontation that would decide the future of both species was about to begin. The mining tunnel fell silent except for the soft breathing of newborn cubs. Goran stared at Jiwan while his hunting party waited for orders. The torchlight flickered across ancient human machinery and alien faces locked in a moment that would change everything. Memory keeper, Goran repeated slowly. What memories do you keep about my people? Jiwan thought carefully before answering. Words would matter more than weapons in this confrontation. The truth had power, but it had to be spoken correctly. Remember Ena, she said, a Karathi mother who died alone because your laws separated her from her daughter. She worked in the dangerous mines to send money back to the pack. Money for Nara's future. Goran's golden eyes widened slightly. He had not known about the money. The pack elders had never told him where the anonymous donations came from. I remember the stories she told about the old times, Jiwan continued. When Karathi packs welcomed outsiders who proved their worth, when strength mattered more than blood purity. One of the younger hunters shifted restlessly. She speaks lies to confuse us. But an older female in the group shook her head. My grandmother told the same stories. Before the Great War, our people judged others by their actions, not their birth. Jiwan pressed her advantage. Ina believed her daughter would bridge two worlds. She said it was written in the eclipse that marked Nara's birth. Superstition, Goran said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Jiwan asked. Look at what has happened. A human healer saved Karathi lives. A Karathi mother trusted that human with her greatest treasure. Two species that barely spoke to each other now share blood in these cubs. She gestured toward Nara and the newborns. Little Ina made soft sounds while her brother Jinwoo slept peacefully. They looked so small and innocent in the harsh torchlight. What do you see when you look at them? Jiwan asked Goran. Abominations. Or the future. Goran took a step closer. His eyes fixed on the cubs with an expression Jiwan could not read. Pain and wonder mixed together in equal measure. I see my children, he whispered. Cubs, I will never be allowed to acknowledge. The law forbids it, one of the other hunters said firmly. We have our orders from the council. The council was not here, Goran replied. They did not see what I see. He knelt beside Nara and looked closely at his offspring. Little Ina opened her golden eyes and looked back at him. Recognition passed between father and daughter in that moment. A bond that no law could break. She has your eyes, Nara said softly. And your stubborn spirit. Goran reached out slowly and touched his daughter's tiny hand. Her fingers closed around his claw with surprising strength. "What have we done?" he said. "What have our laws made us do?" The older female hunter moved closer. "Goran, if the council learns we let them live, then we do not tell the council," Goran said firmly. He stood up and faced his hunting party. "We came here to find an exile who died in the wasteland. We found nothing but empty tunnels." Several of the hunters looked confused. "But the cubs, .. What cubs?" Goran asked. "I see a human healer and a pack member who was lost but now is found." Understanding dawned on some faces. Others remained doubtful. The hunting party was splitting along generational lines. Older members who remembered the ancient stories, younger ones who knew only the current laws. One of the younger hunters raised his weapon. "This is treason. I will not be part of it." "Then you are free to return to the settlement," Goran said calmly. "Tell them we found nothing. Tell them the exile is dead." "I will tell them the truth." Goran's voice turned hard. "The truth is that these cubs deserve a chance to live. The truth is that our laws have become chains that bind us to hatred." The young hunter hesitated. His weapon wavered as he looked at the tiny forms in Nara's arms. "They are innocent," the older female said gently. "Whatever else we believe, we cannot murder innocents." One by one, the weapons lowered. Even the most reluctant hunters could not bring themselves to kill newborns. The moment of greatest danger passed. Jiwan felt her knees go weak with relief. The emergency beacon was still transmitting, but she no longer needed human rescue. The rescue had come from an unexpected source. "What happens now?" Nara asked. She was exhausted from birth and the emotional confrontation. Goran looked around the tunnel at his hunting party. At the human healer who had risked everything. At the cubs who represented a future none of them had imagined. "Now we make new laws," he said. "Laws based on love instead of fear. The council will never accept it," one hunter warned. "Then we make a new council," Goran replied. "A council that includes all who call this world home." He turned to Memory Keeper. "Will you help us remember how to be better?" Juan nodded. "Ina would be proud of what you have chosen today." Over the following hours, everything changed. The hunting party became an escort. They helped Nara and the cubs travel safely to the cave entrance. G1's medical supplies ensured the newborns stayed healthy during the journey. When they emerged into daylight, other Korathi were waiting. Word had spread about the confrontation in the tunnels. Some came with anger, others came with curiosity, all left with wonder at the sight of the hybrid cubs. The human rescue team arrived to find a very different situation than they expected. Instead of a medical emergency, they found the first interspecies summit in the planet's history. Negotiations took days. There were arguments, threats, moments when violence seemed inevitable. But every time tensions rose too high, someone would look at little Ina and Jinwoo sleeping peacefully in their mother's arms. The cubs were proof that cooperation was possible. The final agreement created new territories where mixed families could live safely. New laws that protected interspecies relationships, new hope for a future where Korathi and humans worked together instead of merely coexisting. Goran formally left his old pack and founded a new one, a pack that welcomed anyone willing to live by principles of compassion rather than prejudice. Nara became the pack mother. Jiwan became the first human ever granted full pack membership. The cubs grew strong and healthy. Ina inherited her mother's gentle wisdom and her father's fierce courage. Jinwoo developed his grandmother's love of learning and his namesake's dedication to healing. As the years passed, they were joined by other mixed families. Other couples who had hidden their love found the courage to step into the light. The new pack grew into a new community. The community grew into a new way of life. On quiet evenings, Nara would tell her children about their grandmother, Ina, about the human woman who kept memories safe until they could be shared, about the day when love proved stronger than law, and hope conquered fear. The cubs would listen with wide eyes and then go play with their friends. Korathi cubs and human children together, learning each other's languages, sharing each other's games, building a future their parents could only dream of. And in the human settlement, a recording device sat on Jiwan's desk. Ina's final message, preserved for future generations. A reminder that every act of love creates ripples that spread far. Beyond what anyone can imagine, the alien wolf no longer lay alone. The human no longer whispered forgotten names into empty air. Together, they had built something new, something beautiful, something that proved the universe was large enough for all kinds of love.